Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power of Simplifying Your Firm. This 50-minute webcast is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor Magazine and Canopy. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. Before we get started, I'd like to explain how CPE for this webcast works. The webcast is 50 minutes and qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for the entire 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 4 polling questions during the webcast. In each poll, you need to record an answer, as this is our verification that you are still watching. Later today, you will receive an email from CPA Practice Advisor containing a link to your CPE certificate, assuming you met the qualifications for certification. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people at the same location. So if there are others in your office or home or wherever you are who would like to attend this event at the same computer, please have them join you now. At any time, you can enter questions in the Ask a Question box that appears on your screen, and our speakers will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Questions not answered during this broadcast will be addressed by the speakers afterwards. If you have any difficulty answering the polling questions online, you may post your answers to polling questions in this Ask a Question box, and we'll record them there. You should note that there's an option called Event Resources on your screen. The slides for this presentation are included there, as well as 3 ebooks that our sponsor would like you to enjoy. These are all available for download by clicking Event Resources, and then you can click on the options that you want to download. Also, the archived version of this presentation will appear on the CPA Practice Advisor webcast or website after the webcast ends. CPE will not be available for watching the archived version, but you'll be able to watch it again and share it with anyone else you'd like to present it to. We're grateful to Canopy today for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer the free CPE credit to our attendees. Today, we're joined by John Mitchell and Darren Root. I'll let them introduce themselves, and now we are ready to begin.
All right. Thanks, Gail. Hey, thanks for being here today. I know, gosh, it's a Tuesday, and it is a hot day where we are, and I know you guys are in the middle of your day. I hope you get a little bit of a deep breath today and a moment away from your firm to talk about something that, Darren, we have been thinking about for a really long time and have seen the power of over and over and over in firms, and that is simplicity.
We have, John. I'll give my welcome to everybody, but Steve Jobs probably said it best. Probably should have put a slide in for that at some point, but complexity is kind of easy to create, but simple is really hard. But when you can get something to simple, you can move mountains. And I think, Apple's been really good at that over the years. And in, running my own companies, getting to simple takes work, but man, is it good when you get there. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think we've got, when I start looking through this slide deck, I think about all of the firms that we have talked throughout the years that have helped build this deck, that have been a part of the conversation around simplifying your firm. And if you came here today and you're in the midst of, what most of us are, and that is emails and staff problems and whatever it is that you kind of came in here with today, you need to know that many firms over and over and over again have taken the journey to simplify their firm. And when they do, it has left them with something that helps them build the kind of life that they want to live and not just the kind of firm they want to live. And that's why we're so passionate about this, Darren.
John, as we've evolved in the last, I wouldn't say 15 years or so, we're dealing with some complexities that historically accounting firms haven't dealt with, whether that's security, constant change from a software or technology perspective, staffing challenges in the profession. So running an accounting firm, being a national company, having clients outside, your, defined county that you're in, right? Yeah. All that stuff has been somewhat new in the last 15 years for an accounting firm. And it's gotten really complicated to run a firm. And I think simplifying is the key to building a sustainable, long-term firm that has value.
Absolutely. Well, Darren, we're supposed to share this slide about who we are. We've already introduced ourselves. Co-founders of Better Every Day, been around in the profession for a long time. Darren, a firm owner for, I'm not going to say how many years because it dates you immediately, but a long time, and really well connected throughout the profession. So, what you're going to hear today is all driven by this goal. And the goal is not just to simplify your firm, not just to add money to the bottom line, not just to create a sustainable work culture, but to build a business to support the life that you want to live. And maybe this slide right here is enough for you to pause today, because most of us have drifted. If you haven't chosen simplicity, there's a chance you have drifted into building a firm that consumes your life, and a life that supports your business. And that's what we want to talk about today.
John, I've hardly ever met a firm that didn't drift into a complicated firm. I mean, there are some, but the majority of small firms, medium-sized firms I've run across in my last 40 years have drifted into the model they're in. And it's easy to do because you start taking on clients. You don't want to say no. Those clients are, we'll talk about this more, all over the place, and technology's evolving and all this stuff's happening. And before you know it, you wake up and there's more stuff to do than you have time. And the practice has gotten really complicated. So if you just step back a minute and think about this goal, to really build a business to support the life you want to live, it requires you to think about what that is. How is it I want to live? Do I want to do the majority of my work virtually? Do I want to do it from the beach or from the mountains? Do I want to do it for a certain type of client? Do I want to have lots of staff? I mean, you got to think through all of those things based on the way you want to live your life. And then we're going to craft a firm around that.
Yeah, Darren, I was just thinking, we were in New York City recently, and we had this slide up, and we're talking to a firm and a group of firms, and I looked down at the table, and the person in front of me had just written in huge letters across the whole paper, "drift!" exclamation point. Because the truth is, that word can really resonate with people. You don't set out to build a firm that runs your life and that is in the center of your life. But if you aren't careful, you drift into it. And the truth is, a little bit of effort, a little bit of intent can create a simple firm. And we're excited about that today.
Yeah, John, we usually see two different types of practitioners out there. And historically, we see a lot of what I would consider technician-focused businesses. Michael Gerber wrote a great book called The E-Myth about this, probably 25 years ago, if not more. It was actually the first time I really understood the difference, that there were a couple of types, John, that there was this concept, and that I had become a technician and I had created a firm around my technical skills. And that's where I was putting all my energy. And Gerber talked about this concept of an entrepreneurial focused firm, a business that is not built just on you. It's a business built really to support the life you want to live. And you're sort of the master. You're running that company and setting up the processes, procedures, the business model, all these things. And so today, I think I would just ask whoever's listening, where do you fit? And what is it you want? Do you feel like you're more a technician focused firm where you come in, you shut your door each day and you get your stuff done and hope everybody else does? Or are you running a company and helping everybody become better and reducing friction in that company? Because these are two different ways of really running that firm, John.
Yeah, Darren, I think it's a great question. And it's a great way to start our conversation today, because if you are a technician-based business owner, there's a chance that this is brand new to you, that you haven't even thought about some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And what we hope is that you get energized by this, that you get energized by the thought that you aren't just surviving your firm, but you're building it, you're creating. And that's what an entrepreneurial focused business owner does. So Gail, if you're out there, I think we've got our first polling question that involves this conversation, and a good opportunity for people to think a little bit about where they fall in this world.
Yes, you teed that up perfectly. So here is our first question. Would you consider your firm to be a technician-focused business or an entrepreneurial-focused business? So pick the answer that you feel is most appropriate to you, and then click the submit button.
Johnny, sorry, Gail.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say click the submit button, and we'll see how the audience answered in just a few minutes.
Okay.
John, when you had your own company, which way did you answer this?
So when I started my own company, I would have said I was an entrepreneur. But in 2 years, 3 years, I became a technician. And it took a moment of intersect for someone to say, what are you doing? And the truth is, I want to be an entrepreneur. But between the control issues that I had and the drift that I had into just filling my company full of things that weren't good for the company, I became something I didn't want to be.
Did you said the control issues you had or have?
Have. Have. Yeah, it was good.
I heard
Past
you say
tense
had. I was like,
and
what?
Present tense. Hey, well, we got some good answers from our audience here. Gail, I don't know how much longer we want to give them, but I mean, we're looking at some a pretty interesting group here in terms of this.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got all the answers in that we're going to see, and it's an interesting split.
What's the split? I don't see.
Yeah,
it.
we're about 56% of the group would consider themselves technician focused, and about 44% would say that they're entrepreneurial focused. So I think that's a pretty good indicator that we often kind of find ourselves. Yeah, that we kind of often find ourselves on the line a little bit, maybe depending on the time of year and the season even.
You know, the only thing I would sort of leave that question with, John, is I think that when you go to sell something like your business, to somebody else, they're looking for an entrepreneurial focused business, something that doesn't rely on an owner technician more than I think if nothing else, you're thinking about at some point succession or, where the firm goes. It's important to be able to make a shift to an entrepreneurial focused business, because I think you end up with more value creation for a potential next owner. So I'll just leave it with that, John.
Yeah. That reminds me of the built to sell model as well. Just the thought that I would think about an exit at the beginning. So, Darren, I think about this question: does your business currently support the life you want to live? And I think this has been such a part of my life for the last 15 years now, 10 years of working with firms. But this is a question you came up with, and I have a feeling it's personal.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, I started my business as a technician. I left Deloitte and I started a firm, and I did a lot of tax, did a lot of client accounting. I did a lot of those things. And I thought, John, when the phone rang at the front desk, this is back when people called the firm. So when the phone rang at the front desk, I knew the next beep was going to be my phone in my office because everybody depended upon me.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought at the time that was a good thing. And it turns out it wasn't. Right. And so it wasn't until I read Gerber's book, The E-Myth, and ended up really embracing that, did I understand the difference. And from that point forward, I mean, I was all in to making sure that when the phone rang at the front desk, it was not for me.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot more freedom. I subsequently ended up writing a book with Gerber called The E-Myth Accountant, because I was so passionate about this. And what we want to walk through today, John, is sort of what the process looks like of moving from a technician to an entrepreneurial focused firm, or if you're already entrepreneurial focused, helping you get to an even simpler firm.
Yeah. Darren, we did have one question or a couple questions here inside of the Q&A, and keep asking those questions. I'm going to surface those as I see them and pull them out. And just somebody asking, can we reiterate just the difference between a technician and an entrepreneur? And I thought maybe you'd be the best for that.
I think that as I look at that, I think of when I felt like a technician-oriented firm, I was deep into grinding and, getting tax returns done, onboarding clients, and my head, 95% of the time was down producing. And that's probably where I found value, was in creating invoices and, producing and getting product out the door, versus an entrepreneurial focused firm is one where I think 70 to 80% of your day is spent enabling others and making, reducing friction for others, and helping others succeed and take ownership of things, and really crafting a fantastic place to work. So I think one is sort of heads down in the weeds all day. And I think the other is really kind of heads up, leading the company, into the future.
Yeah. We used to say, it's kind of an old phrase now, but we used to say you're either working in your firm or on your firm. And a technician often finds themselves mostly in their firm and not so much thinking about working on their firm. So, well, Darren, in the midst of all of this, and in the midst of having conversations with, at this point, hundreds, maybe even thousands of firms, we've kind of distilled simplifying your firm down to this formula. Shocker, it's math. This formula that we really feel like brings a clear approach to what it looks like to simplifying your firm.
Yeah, I think, as we think about this concept of a business model, because I think one of the most overlooked components of a firm today, especially a firm that hasn't spent a lot of time thinking about their firm, is they haven't created a real defined, an intentional business model. Everybody has a business model. It may be super crazy, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we've sort of distilled what it means, the components of a business model, John, and we've broken that down into three things. Like, what is it that you really want to sell? And getting really, really, really clear about that. Who is it you really want to sell that to? And getting really clear about that. And then how you want to deliver that, right? What are those systems and processes and technologies and all of that stuff required to deliver those? But John, if you can get those three things super clear and everybody on the team understands them, this is when you can start getting simple. Again, kind of back to, what a complex firm looks like, John. We like to use this analogy of a messy closet, because I think it's easy for. We've done this tons of times, John. Every time we talk about this, it's like a light bulb goes off for people.
Head nods.
This messy closet is the fact that you've drifted into your business model. Yeah. And all the garments in here sort of represent different service offerings. They represent different ways to deliver those service offerings. They represent industries that you're not necessarily great at delivering to, maybe products that you're not necessarily great at delivering. So it represents a really complex firm. And just to sort of reiterate complexity, John, just imagine you said, okay, we're doing payroll for clients. Okay, so you're doing payroll. Okay, that's somewhat clear. But how are you gathering hours? I mean, are they emailing them to you? They faxing them to you? You know, they filling out spreadsheets? They using a time clock? And then how are you getting those into the system? Are they being keyed into the system? Do they come in automatically? And then when you deliver a paycheck stub, how are you delivering those stubs? Are some people on direct deposit? Some people getting paper? How do you deliver the documents at the end of that? Every single one of those points that I just talked about, John, is represented by a different box or piece of clothing in this complex closet. Does that make sense?
It does. You know, if you think about this as the what, the who, and the how, you've got products all over the place. You got people coming in that probably shouldn't be in your closet, your firm, and you've got processes. You know, Darren, I think one of the reasons we're so passionate about technology and why we love working with people like Canopy is because they have the power to be able to bring some clarity and some simplicity to this. But if you just keep choosing softwares, if you just keep going and downloading another free trial and paying another, you end up actually convoluting the closet. You end up even making it worse. And we really believe there's a way to get to simplicity in all three of those categories.
Yeah, the how is certainly complicated for people, John, using all kinds of different point solutions to accomplish things. So yeah, using a tool like Canopy on the to take friction out of processes makes a lot of sense. But you know, if we compare this complex closet, John, and let's say that you're sitting there and you're saying, yeah, that represents my firm. So what does simplicity look like? And you know, it makes me feel better just looking at the picture, John.
I know the other one is giving you the willies. I know.
Yeah. So John's heard this story 100 times, but I was in New York, my wife and I, and I read this article about this closet at the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I mean, I thought I was the only odd person who would go to the Met to see a closet. But there were other people standing around this closet when I was there. So in my defense, so this actually was a closet, John, in the Met. And it had been a woman's closet and she had passed. And how it ended up in the Met, there's actually a book written on this now.
Yeah. Sarah Berman's closet, right? Yeah.
Sarah Berman's closet. But I think the thing that was so interesting, I actually physically took this picture. So this is not a promo photo. I took the picture. I'm standing in front of the closet and I'm mesmerized about how clean this woman had her thinking. She had curated everything down to know exactly the colors or color in this particular case that she felt best in, the style of clothes that she felt best in, the same with shoes, and the way that she would organize that in the closet. And it talks about what a sense of peace that this simplicity gave to her. But when you compare the complex closet, John, to this simple closet, to get your thinking this clean requires a lot of effort. To actually know these things and to get your thinking this clean, it's easy to create that complex closet. You just keep buying crap and tossing it in, right? This one, you actually have to know, you have to curate. And that's what we mean by your business model. You know, what is it that you want to sell? Who is it you want to sell that to? And how you want to deliver that. That's how clean Sarah Berman got her thinking on her closet.
Yeah, you know, you think, Darren, the reason we start with that question about being an entrepreneur or being a technician is because if you spend 80 to 90% of your time at work as a technician, you can't find the time and energy and effort and focus to create a simple closet. And part of the commitment of the Simple Firm is to free up your time to really clean your closet and to be clear about what's best for the firm.
Just imagine if you ask a team member to execute on something inside the complex closet. versus executing on something inside the simple closet. And
Yeah.
I think at the heart of everything that we're talking about today, you can keep this visual in your mind. Are you a complex firm, or have you simplified to the point where now you can get a team involved and you can get your engine, your flywheel running, and you can grow that? Sometimes you have to slow down, get clarity in order to go faster at another point.
Great point. Hey, well, let's pull up a dumpster and start cleaning out the closet here. Let's start with your what, the products. Let's talk a little bit about the products in your firm. And Darren, this is often a little bit of an epiphany for people because they don't think necessarily about their services that they provide people as products, as deliverables and things that people can almost pull off the shelf with boundaries around them to provide clarity.
I think that's where you get clarity, John, is when you can actually productize an offering. And we'll go into the anatomy of a product here in a minute. But what you want to sell, instead of just, the normal course is a client calls and says, hey, I just became, treasurer of a not-for-profit. And if it was like me, I was terrible at not-for-profits. But if a treasurer called and that treasurer was a client of mine, would I take that not-for-profit in my early days? Yeah. And then what was it? It was a mess because I didn't know how to do it. My team didn't know how to do it. I was going to inject this into the system, and it was just a mess. As opposed to starting the other way around and saying, what we sell is this, whatever this is, right? We sell client accounting services, right? We sell payroll services. We sell tax services. And you can even get more clear in and around those products, but let's just take those three. And I think you got to start by asking yourself, John, what are you really great at doing?
Mm-hmm.
When I was running the firm, we were great at client accounting. We really were. More specifically, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but more specifically for service-based businesses. But we were great at doing client accounting. We were great at doing payroll, and we were really pretty good at doing tax, as long as the tax was U.S. based and and this type of client, a client that didn't own a hedge fund or something like that, right? We knew what we were great at doing, but that's not what we had been doing. And so we spent a lot of time going through and making a list of, gosh, what's everything we're selling? And then we started circling the things that we were pretty good at selling, at delivering. And then we started getting down to the things we were great at selling or great at delivering. And then we got down to asking ourselves, which one of these things best drives our economic engine, right? Because that's important. What can you get other people to leverage inside your firm? So as you start curating what it is that you sell, you need to ask yourself these questions.
Yeah, Darren, I think there's so much freedom in this conversation. I was thinking about this. I'm stealing your analogy here, but I think it's funny and it's so apropos that you never walk into Starbucks and order a cheeseburger. You never go into Starbucks and wonder what you should get. You know exactly what they do best. And you walk in there and you order a product. And that's exactly how your customers should feel. But, my passion is for staff. If you're listening to this today and you're a firm owner, what I care most about is the environment you're creating for your team. And if you don't have clear boundaries around what you're selling and who you're selling to, your team goes to work every day with this ambiguity that creates a level of anxiety and a level of psychological tension that is not needed. And this is part of what it means to bring clarity to your organization.
Yeah, if you can get this right, you're a third of the way there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, John, when I first went through this exercise, we were doing some audits. I was terrible at audits. Again, this was a long time ago. I'd been a tax person at Deloitte. So we were doing some audits, and as I went through this sort of exercise, I decided I was going to sell off my audit practice. At the time, we were doing a couple $100,000 in audits. I decided to sell off the audit practice. I sold it for a couple $100,000, which back then felt like a lot of money. But, I thought my revenues, the next year was going to fall by a couple $100,000. But the reality is, the more I got focused, we not only grew by that 200,000 I had sold, we grew by significantly more the next year because we got more and more focused, picking up the right clients.
This is what we mean by the power of simplicity. Leveraging simplicity means more focus, less stress, less anxiety around things you shouldn't be doing anyway. And in the long run, better for the bottom line.
Absolutely.
That's the power of simplicity. Well, I think we got another question here. This one's actually about your clients, I think. But Gail, you out there?
Yep. So this is our second polling question. And this is, have you clearly defined your target clients? That's just a yes or no question. So just pick the answer that most appropriately applies to you. And I'm sorry, excuse me. And then click the submit button. By the way, if you missed my comment in the very beginning of this session, if you have any trouble answering the question online, just go ahead and post your answer in the ask a question box on your screen and we'll pick it up there.
We'll, John, dive deeper into this in our next, in our who, but essentially we're talking about ideal client profiles here and knowing who the target clients are. So this will be
interesting. There's more than one of
those.
Yeah, there's potentially more than one of those, which we'll talk about. Not just a matter of one client, but maybe for each of your products and different types of client profiles that you're after.
Absolutely. So I'm not seeing results, John, so you got to keep me updated.
I've got them right now. Looks like we've got a lot of people already voted. Looks like we're really pretty close. Looks like most people have, about 65% or so have defined at least a target client. We'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of product-based ICPs here in a minute. But the 34% or so have not.
A great follow-up question, which we're not going to ask, but a great follow-up question is, what percentage of your clients fit your ideal client profile, your target
That's
client?
a totally different question. Yeah, that's right.
When we were running our events in Indianapolis all the time, we had hundreds of firms in there all the time. And the norm, I would see, John, was somewhere sub 40%, around 35% of clients inside the firm were actually their target customers. A lot of people knew who they wanted.
Yeah.
But that's not who they had.
So I have an even deeper question that I would ask when they were in Indianapolis. And that was, okay, staff members, how many of your clients would you say? Because it's one thing if you're a firm owner and they look like an ideal client. But when you get in and you start working with them every day and you start doing their bookkeeping and you start dealing with their communications or lack thereof, and you start figuring this out, the question is, are they really? And just because they fit a profile on paper doesn't mean they're an actual and ideal client. So you can dig deeper and deeper as you get closer to the source with those things.
We'll dive into this more, but an ideal client for the owner might be somebody who paid their invoice. But
that's right. That's right. Goes a little deeper from that.
Right. All right, John, let's talk about the anatomy of a product. Go ahead and let's walk through this.
Yeah, the idea of the anatomy of the product was just what's inside. What does it mean to create a product? And if you're listening to this today and you have never gone through a anatomy of a product exercise, just take this slide deck, grab these bullet points right now, and begin to find your best product, your most lucrative product, the one that came to mind when we started talking about your what, and make sure you have got these bullet points that address that product in each of these ways.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Let's just pick one. So client accounting, let's say, is a product. And let's pick a target demographic as service-based businesses. Well, let's go a little more narrow than that. Let's just say optometry practices. All right, so we have this this client type, or we have this product, which is client accounting, and we know we're going to deliver it for optometry practices. So what's the deliverable? Is it visualized? Is it, is it traditional financial statement? Is it a meeting, a Zoom meeting? What is the deliverable or deliverables that come out of that? Answer that question for yourself. And then what's the process, to get to that deliverable? You should have that. And then a sales presentation. So just imagine, John, the phone rings, new optometry practice. If your team had a one-pager, and sales presentation may feel too aggressive for people listening, but it's a one-pager, maybe in PowerPoint, that explains the service, the product that you're delivering. 2 pages at most. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we do. We do X, Y, and Z, and here's our deliverables. And that way, every time you talk to an optometry practice, everybody's on the same page, including your clients, right? And then you have a proposal and an engagement letter that supports that sales presentation along with the marketing material to get more optometry practices, and then a standard way of onboarding those optometry practices. This is what we're talking about in productizing just one offering. And then once you have all that figured out, John, you can take and put it on your website. So many people just start with their website and say, we do client accounting. No, start by building the product and then bring it to life on your website.
Yeah, your landing page should be a byproduct of the plan that you have, the anatomy for your product, so that it's so clear to your customer where the boundaries are. Darren, I look at that new client onboarding presentation and I hear staff members take a deep breath because if you can clearly define what it looks like to onboard a new client, then what you've done is that you've met them on your terms. You have said, here's the way we do this. You don't say, however you want to bring us your documentation. You say, here's exactly what we need from you and the way that we go about it. And your staff takes this big, deep breath. Your whole firm takes a deep breath because now the business is on your terms. You know what you're doing and you're providing the product. And that's really the power of the anatomy of a product.
So to get clarity around what it is that you do, you need to go through this process of narrowing down what drives your economic engine, what you're great at doing. And then you need to build products out for all of those things. Just imagine for your firm a second, if you had that amount of clarity around what you're doing. And then, John, the leaders, actually everybody in the firm's role, but certainly the leader's role is to remove as much friction from the process as possible. So what's the process look like of figuring out what you want to sell? Remove as much friction from that as possible.
Yeah, we stole this concept from Jeff Bezos a few years back. He believes
or borrowing it.
or whatever. Yes, legally we're borrowing it. But Jeff said that he feels like his number one responsibility as the CEO of Amazon is to remove friction from the customer experience. And that's why a new Amazon box shows up at my door every day, because all the friction is gone. And, Anita asks earlier on about the difference between an entrepreneur and a technician. And one of those differences is that an entrepreneur can look at the firm and say, my job today is not to create billable work as much as it is to look at the friction and to reduce as much friction in the customer experience and the employee experience as I can possibly reduce.
Yep. All right, John.
So Darren, we got to keep moving. We got to get to our who.
We do. So let's talk about who. So who you selling to? That's the question. What types of clients? This goes back to our polling question. What types of clients do you want to serve? And we have this concept, and it's actually, we didn't invent it, but everybody seems to be talking about it now. We've been talking about it for years in our business, which is ideal client profiles. So when you think about an ideal client profile, you can look at an ideal client profile really by industry. So in my case, we talked about optometry practices. I don't necessarily recommend that you only get down to one. You may have industry or industries. So in our firm's case, it was service-based businesses, which is pretty broad. It's like 70% or more of the economy. So it's pretty broad. But then we had subspecialties underneath that, which were like optometry practices. And then we did churches and things like that. And then, as you think about your ideal client profile, if you take on a new prospect that you want to take on as a client, I mean, do they want to buy what it is that you're selling? I mean, we just worked on the what. Are these guys, is the prospect wanting to buy what you want to sell? And then the next bullet shouldn't be a bullet by itself. There's a colon at the end of that.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yep.
You may have multiple ICPs for different products. So for instance, you may have not only an ideal client profile for your firm, but you may have a 1040 ideal client profile. And we have a lot we can say about that, but we don't have time today. You may have ideal client profiles for doing payroll. And maybe some payrolls you decide to send off to ADP, and other payrolls you want to process in-house. And it depends on, the ideal client profile for the ones that you want to process in-house. So same with accounting services. So as you think about your who, think about what an ideal client profile looks like based on these different things. And what I've seen, John, is firms will go through and say, our ideal client profile for optometry practices is people that pay us on time. There's like a list of 10 things. They pay us on time. They take our advice. They use the tech stack that we advocate. They go through a list of what makes up that ideal client profile. They just don't say, oh, they're an optometry practice, because you can have a good one and not so good one.
Yeah. I think of it as more of a persona as well. Like, what kind of human beings do we surround ourselves with, which I think leads to this conversation about removing friction from the who. Darren, the way you say it is that we curate our firms, and you talk about that in terms of our tech stacks, but I think about that with people too. Every human being, every business that you bring into your firm is like bringing someone home. You don't just let anybody in your house. You don't just let anyone around your family. You don't just and because we know when we bring someone into our lives and into our work, that their personalities, their variables, their legal problems all have an impact on the lives of the people around us. And so being able to stop and say, no, I am guarding the firm from the wrong people coming in. And that doesn't necessarily mean just personalities, but people who bring problems that we can't solve are going to cause serious friction inside of our firm.
You may not have had enough time, John, but I shared an Instagram video with you last night.
I saw that.
Dr. Appa. So he works on teeth he has offices in New York and a few other places around the world. But anyway, he was talking about curating the people he engages with, which helps him sort of live the life that he wants to live. Absolutely. And what you just said just really reminded me of that, John. So we're constantly curating clients that are not a good fit and clients that are a good fit. I think historical accounting practices felt like it was hard to get new clients. In today's world, we have greater demand than we have supply, it seems like, in the profession. There's not a better time right now than right now to curate your ideal client base.
I love the word curate because it reminds me of a museum curator. I don't know where else that word is used, but in a museum curator, an art curator doesn't say that art is good or bad. They say that art belongs here. And I think that's the difference in the who, is not to say these companies are good, or they may have money, they may be a good fit for my bottom line, but they don't belong here. They don't fit inside of this museum because of the characteristics and that's the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a technician, having the time, energy, effort, insight to reduce the friction in your who.
One of the things that we've asked a lot of firms, John, is when was the last time you printed off a client list? And you sit down with your team and you walk through, is this the right Is this the right client for us? Is this not the right client for us? We have a tendency to take on a new client, chuck them into the system, and then go on to the next one. It's just the way the profession seems like it's historically worked. So far, John, we've talked about making sure you know what you want to sell and having a product for all those things. We've talked about who you want to sell that to. And now it's time for us to talk about how to think about how you're going to deliver that. And go ahead, John.
This is where you get into your wheelhouse. I mean, it's all your wheelhouse, but this is where I feel like we only have 15 minutes left of time. You could spend another whole hour on this because it's such an important part of cleaning up that closet. And that is choosing the right tech stack. It's creating the right customer experience. It's choosing an intentional way to deliver your products instead of just trying to get through the day.
Yeah, it's certainly not just tech stack, although that's what is top of mind to most practitioners. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what solutions should I buy? What's my tech stack? I hear that all the time. So what technology should I buy? We can talk a little bit about that, but it's also on how do you standardize the process. So it's processes, it's technology, it's all that stuff. So I'm gonna talk about how I start thinking about tech stack, John. And everything for me starts with the concept of the client experience.
Yeah.
So as I think about, I know what I want to sell, I know who I want to sell that to, I first, in my how component, think about how do I want this to come across to the client, right? So do I want them to be in a mobile app that is branded for my firm, as an example, and that's how I communicate with them and deliver documents and share tasks? Is that what I want? Do I want a platform they log into? Do I want both of those things? How do I want clients to get, if I'm going to sell payroll, how do I want clients to get their paycheck stubs? So this how is really important. And I think it starts with, okay, whatever technology company you are, what's the client experience? If it's client facing, every technology we have is not client facing. Some technologies are back end facing and client facing. Think QuickBooks Online. There's a back end component of that for client accounting, and there's a front end component of that for the mobile app for the client. Think of Bill.com. Again, front end component approving bills or seeing who you paid, but there's a workflow component on the back end. So what's the client experience if those are two tools that you're looking at? Think about Canopy. Canopy is what you would consider has all the trappings of practice management, but it's so much more than that. And it's, how do I deliver an invoice to a client? How do I get paid from that client? How do I communicate with that client? Is it the mobile app? Is it the online solution? So as you look at practice management solutions, or you look at payroll solutions, or you look at client accounting solutions, start by thinking, okay, I know what I want to sell. I know who I want to sell that to. Now, what do I want that client experience to be, John?
Yeah, man, I think this is the place to start. Darren, we're both reading a book right now that kind of, when you read a really good book and everywhere you look, you see the book, and right now for me, it's Unreasonable Hospitality. If you haven't read this book, it's just an incredible look at why client experience matters and how to do it well. And it really does. Simple Firm really begins with what a client experiences. And the idea of creating a process and a whole environment and culture around hospitality, around taking care of your customers is what you need to do to leverage the most out of your firm. So,
people have a tendency to ask me, who is it that I follow in the tax and accounting space, John? And
Ralph Lauren.
I don't, I don't want this to sound wrong, but my answer usually is I have a tendency not to. I follow people outside this space. I look at Unreasonable Hospitality, somebody who had the best restaurant in the world. How do you get there? Or Ralph Lauren, how do you create a feel with Ralph Lauren Home that makes you feel so warm and so good when you go into his restaurant or stores? How do you do that? And it's usually a great hotel or something, but they know how to create fantastic customer experiences. And people know when they've had a great customer experience. And today they know when they've had a, that's not so good customer experience. I mean, we've become more aware of that, or at least I have, John.
Absolutely. Darren, in the interest of moving forward here, we got a few more things to cover. I really want to get to standardization. One of the things that we talk about in terms of the processes and how you deliver your products really is about standardizing. It's about creating I caught you mid-drink. Yeah, I think this is obviously a big part of what we've helped firms with throughout the years, is creating a consistent way to think about their products and delivery of those.
I mean, imagine if your team comes in and they know what they're going to sell, they know who they're going to sell it to, and you have a standardized process with the right technology stack to deliver that. Imagine how efficient and effective they can be when you pick up a new client or for existing clients. It's about standardizing from end to end. We'll talk more about removing friction, but this is where Jeff Bezos has crushed it, right?
Absolutely.
He standardized the processes I moved all my prescriptions to Amazon, John. It's fantastic. Well, only somebody over 60 gets worried about how they get their prescriptions, I guess. But I literally am in Amazon's, platform. They have all my prescriptions. They're plugged into my insurance, and I click reorder, maybe 5 times, and then it shows up the next day. He's taken all the friction out of what was painful when I had to go to CVS, right? It wasn't done. The drive-through was long, all those things, but he standardized all of that. So that's what we want firms to do, is think about, as they work on their business model and they look at technologies, it's more than just technology. It's about standardizing the process. How do I collect payroll hours? How do those payroll hours get into the system? How do I deliver the paycheck? What's the stub look like going out into a mobile app? It's probably not even a stub. That's probably an old word anymore, right? But how do we standardize everything that we do? That's how you get efficient and effective.
Yeah, and then that leads to the kind of team experience that it creates an irresistible culture, a place where people want to stay. We all know that right now staffing is maybe as hard as it's been in a really long time throughout all small business, including accounting firms. And part of that is this messy closet that a lot of small businesses and accounting firms are a part of right now. And your team just does not want to bring more chaos into their lives. And so thinking about all of your processes, all of your technologies, the how in your firm through the lens of what would it be like to have to operate this business? Darren, most of the people that are on this call today, and yourself included, it's been a long time since you've had a boss, like a real boss breathing down your neck, or a real boss, and being able to think about what would it be like to have to actually pull this stuff off every single day, creating that team experience and thinking through every piece of the process and every technology you used as your team would.
So removing friction is key, John. We have firms now that they go off at the end of busy season, and this is what they spend half their day doing, asking, where's the friction in the firm? And they start removing that. And that's how firms get better every day, is consistently curating their what, their who, their how, and removing friction from all those things. And this all goes back to asking yourself, what kind of firm do you want? Do you want that messy closet kind of firm? Or do you want a more simple firm? And I think it's an important question to ask yourself, because I think this is the model for creating a simpler firm to operate. Thoughts, John?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wish we had more time to talk about this question, because I do think it is up to you. And I think what happens to us is we often drift into something and then it's not in our control, and we forget this firm belongs to me. I get to choose what kind of firm I want. Hopefully that's something that you have felt today. Gail, you still out there? We got 2 more polling questions we got to get through.
I think, is there 2?
I think there's just one left, but yes, I'm still out here. Yeah, well, maybe there are 2. Yeah,
I think there are 2. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, we're going to shoot them out here really quickly. Okay, first of the last 2 questions. Have you set aside time in your schedule to work on simplifying your business? Answer yes or no, whatever you feel you can honestly report, and then click submit.
Darren, just quickly, there's a couple different ways that we suggest people do this. One is on a regular basis as a part of your calendar, that you block off time, that it becomes part of the rhythm of your life and the rhythm of your leadership inside the firm. And the other is more of an annual rhythm, where you would take a yearly, if not a quarterly, and definitely after tax season, maybe before tax season, time away with an agenda to work on your business, to work on looking for friction and work on those 3 ingredients of the formula that drive a simple firm.
I agree, John. There's so many more things that we can dive into. It's too bad we're out of time. We're going to run out of time today, but I hope this has been pretty helpful for people. Are people taking time away, John?
Yeah, about half. It looks like 50-50 or so. Darren, I know we only have a couple more minutes. I really want to get over to the firm operating system. Go ahead.
Reagan just sent a note. We have to get to our last polling question, so let's get it out of the way. Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Okay, let's get to that polling question right now. Gail?
All right, so our last polling question is not in front of me. Oh, here it is. Sorry, it is.
It's how many different software solutions? Yeah.
Yeah, how many different software solutions are you currently using? And your options are none, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 30 plus.
And definitely using a web browser today.
They're on Global Meet, so we know there should be none of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think actually there should be another option for, I can't even count that high. But
Gail, what we see as the norm is number 5.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That is not the norm we're seeing in today's call.
No, what are we seeing today?
Number 5, choice number 5, or yes. Or the number 5. Yeah.
No, choice 5.
Yeah, we're seeing almost 50% saying they're in the 1 to 5 range, and 4% saying they're in the 0 range. So we know that they're making this up.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, when you just think about Microsoft, so you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams. So there's 4.
Yeah,
so,
they add up real fast.
Starts adding up Zoom and tax software and all that stuff. It has a tendency to get into the 21 to 30 range.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I think people are messing with us with these answers here.
Yeah.
But that's all right. You still get your CPE credit.
Yeah. There is a whole tech strategy around this, John. I don't think we have time to get into that today, but
we don't have to. But please check out the PowerPoint deck. Darren has developed a really good piece of technology, or a slide here, a visual, to help you think through the technologies in your firm. And I think we just want to leave with this reminder that you have it inside of you. It is within your power and within your purview to build a business that supports the life you want to live. And if you don't have the firm you want to today, you can get better every day. And the idea that you would be able to have a formula to simplify your firm, Darren, we've seen it happen over and over again. If you're interested in following Darren and I along, we have a podcast. You can follow us along as we get better every day and help.
It's called Better Every Day.
It is. It's pretty easy to remember. So, Gail, I'll give it back to you.
All right. Thank you, guys. I feel like we need to talk to Canopy about bringing you all back to do part 2 of this.
Technology. So I think we need a part 2.
So anyway, thank you both, John and Darren, for such an outstanding presentation and lots of food for thought. We hope all of you enjoyed this webinar, and remind you that you can find all of our upcoming webinars at cpapracticeadvisor.com/webinars. We want to thank all of you for sharing your time today and attending this webinar. And we especially want to thank Canopy for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to each attendee. And speaking of CPE, you will receive your CPE credit in your email box later this afternoon. Look for an email from CPA Practice Advisor. If you have any questions about CPE, please contact me at gperry, Gperry, at cpapracticeadvisor.com. Also, if there are more than one of you watching on the same computer at the same time and your other colleagues need CPE credit, send me their name and email address. Again, it's gperry at cpapracticeadvisor.com. You are going to be presented with a post-event survey for this event, which will appear on your screen as soon as I stop talking. We'd appreciate if you take a moment to fill out this form so that we can continue to improve our webinar series. Thank you all so very much. And our audio is going to end now.